The following podcast contains strong language, adult themes, including gambling, and discussions around physical violence. Sounds great, doesn't it? But if you do think you are one of those people that may be offended by such things, discretion is advised. Or just, go and put Radio 4 back on. And that's it. We're live. First episode, Octagon Odds. Welcome. If you can hear us, that means that you're listening to the very first episode, and you are very welcome. My first job as the host for today is to introduce myself and our two guests that are joining us to run through a massive card, UFC 266. So many great stories to talk about here. Nick Diaz returns after 6 long years. The Ultimate Fighter coaches finally face off for the belt. Valentina defends her belt for a 6th time. Dan Hooker makes a return after 2 big losses, and a big heavyweight clash to look forward to as well. I'm so glad to be joined by George Hardy and Ross Beaumont to look through the whole card. George, how are you, mate?
I'm feeling fantastic, thank you, Adam. I'm very excited to delve into this card because I think plausibly it might be one of the best ones of the year, to be honest.
Ross, what do you think? I'm really excited for this one, don't you think?
Yeah, well, as an MMA fan, it's hard not to be, really, with the likes of Nick Diaz returning after what must be 6-7 years now, and just the rest of the card speaks for itself. So I'm very buzzing.
Well, let's get straight into it.
It's going to be a crazy one.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much for us to talk about, and not even enough time for us to do it in. So let's get straight on with it. If you are listening, remember to give us a follow on social, Octagon_odds. Give us a review if you're on Apple or SoundCloud or Spotify. Leave us a comment. Let us know what you think of the show. So first fight we're going to run through. Amazingly, it's on the undercard. Dan Hooker versus NASRAT HAQPARAST. Sorry, I know I was going to get that name wrong as well. It's NASRAT HAQPARAST.
Just the fact that that's on the prelims speaks for itself. Just that Dan Hooker is not even the main fight on the prelims. That just speaks volumes.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. Honestly, if you think about it, what was the last time we saw Dan Hooker? Who was he fighting? It was Chandler.
Dan Hooker fought Chandler, wasn't it?
Yeah, and he got dropped by Michael Chandler early in the first round.
Before that,
I think to go from that to fighting someone who unranked. Nasrat's unranked, is he?
Yeah, he is. Yeah, Nasrat is unranked. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a bit of a big jump, don't you think, fellas?
Well, obviously Hooker's coming off the back of 2 big losses as well. Obviously lost to Poirier earlier in the year, back at the start of the pandemic, I think it was. So this is a really big fight for him. I actually think it's a great matchup. Like you say, Nasrat is obviously unranked, and he's not exactly known for having much of a ground game. He doesn't really look to mix in takedowns. In fact, he's only landed 1 takedown in his UFC career and 0 in his last 6 fights, which really suits Hooker. It's a good chance to try and get that winning momentum back, don't you think, George?
Absolutely. I mean, from what we've seen from Nasrat, I also wanted to mention, by the way, that the guy looks like a little Kelvin Gastelum.
Yeah, big time.
Anyone else see that?
Yeah, spits, mate.
So yeah, I mean, what we've seen from him is he's on a 2-fight win streak. He beat Rafa Garcia last time, and I think they've both been decisions his last 2 fights. I think Hooker is going to be out for blood. I think he's lost 2 in a row versus the hardest opponents in the division, plausibly. I think Hooker's going to be out for blood. Honestly, I can see him winning it.
Yeah, I think you make such a good point about that Hooker has been fighting dogs, mate. Like Michael Chandler, Poirier before that, Paul Felder, Ala Quinta, James Vick are his last 5 fights. And obviously with 2 losses, it kind of makes sense for him to take a step back and go to an unranked fighter. Obviously, Ross, by no means is Nasrat looking to turn up and be a punching bag. This is a massive opportunity for him to make a name off the back of Hookers, really, isn't it?
100%, mate. As big a draw it is for Hooker to go down. It's the same for Nasrat to go up. It's such a big jump. If he can prove himself, and if he can do, even if you lose to Hooker, like there's no shame in that. So yeah, if he can go out there, prove himself, put on a good fight, get a name for himself, people are going to start recognizing him. But at the end of the day, sorry, go on.
Sorry, go on, mate. Who out of the two of you has seen the Drew Dober fight?
Yeah.
Obviously he lost. And I saw that and I tried taking insight into that, and he came out really explosive at the beginning. And what Dober was able to do was just stay really calm in the pocket and landed the better shots in those exchanges, and ended up dropping him. George, do you think that's something that's probably going to suit Hooker's style and the way Hooker likes to approach his fights?
Interestingly enough, from the Poirier fight, now it's hard to beat Dustin Poirier in a striking battle.
Too right.
Yeah.
So everybody knows that, one of the best strikers in the UFC. I don't hold that against Hooker.
5-round war with him.
Yeah, couldn't see him winning that. And with Michael Chandler, what the issue was is I think Hooker was circling away and he had his hands down and he was waiting for the takedown, which is obviously a massive threat when you're fighting someone with the credentials of Chandler. Now, what I think Hooker's going to have this time is a bit more freedom to fight with his hands. I think we're going to see a better striking clinic from Dan Hooker this time. Definitely, that's what I see.
Yeah, we know that he's got the potential to absolutely go out there and slug it out with the best of them. As I say, 5-round fight with Dustin Poirier, like not many people do that, to be fair. So yeah, if you can stay stood up, which he probably is, as we said, it's probably going to be a standing fight. Maybe a few shoots here and there, but yeah, it's Hooker's icing on the cake, really, isn't it, to be stood up all day.
Yeah, looking at the betting markets, if you can find a bookie that's offering no takedowns in the fight on this one, then yeah, back it to the hilt. Like I say, Nasrat's only had one takedown in his UFC career, and I can't see, because to be fair to Nasrat, he's a big, strong guy, so I can't see Hooker really wanting to wrestle with him or.
Yeah, he's not much of an engager, is he, Hooker? When it comes to the takedowns.
No, and I think he obviously has a lot of faith in his striking. He never wavered from that in the Poirier fight over 5 rounds. Like you say, it was a war, and he kind of never wavered around backing his striking. So I think he's obviously got a lot of confidence in what he can do on the feet. And bringing it to the betting markets then, because it's actually an interesting betting market for the card in this one, because Dan Hooker is currently 4-6 favourite at the minute, and Nasrat is 11-8. What's interesting is there has been quite a lot of fluidity in this market this week, and it has moved around quite a lot. The first thing that came out was obviously that Dan Hooker was struggling to get a visa to get out of New Zealand and arrive in Las Vegas. So as it stands, Hooker is due to arrive in Las Vegas 12 hours before the weigh-ins on Friday. So potentially anytime tomorrow, sort of this time tomorrow. Now, obviously, from a punter's perspective, you're looking for certainty, you're looking for, consistency, and the idea of someone stepping off a plane, especially with the time difference between New Zealand and Las Vegas, 12 hours later weighing in, having to cut weight and that whole process, and then fighting 24 hours later, if that's something that would potentially put me off a little bit with going with Hooker from a punter's perspective. On the flip side of that, and I hate to use this in a betting sense, it's more just a note, is that obviously Nasrat unfortunately announced that his mother passed away. I think it was about 7 days ago. So obviously massive respect to him for going ahead with the fight. But yeah, you've obviously got to wonder whether that may have disrupted his preparation somewhat. How do you see it go from a betting perspective? You think it's Hooker all day, or can either of you see that money towards Nasrat?
You've got to think that you've got to think that with what's going on in Nasrat's life, it might be mentally affecting him. But what you've got to also remember is that these fighters are built differently, aren't they? Really. Most of them will go in there and their animal instincts will kick in, and they'll forget about any worries they have in their life, because they're just the strongest people on earth, really, aren't they? Same with Hooker. You're right. He might be landing in Vegas later than you'd prefer that he would, but it's Dan Hooker. He's probably going to be fine. And with that said, I can see Hooker keeping the range, landing quite a lot of shots on Nasrat, but I have a feeling that it's going to be He's gonna have a chin. I don't know if
Yeah,
it's because he
Nasrat's-
looks like
yeah.
Calvin Gastelum.
Yeah, he's going to have a bit of a
But-
chin. Going to have a bit of a chin, to be
So
fair to him.
I could see Hooker landing a lot of strikes, maybe not finishing him, and maybe going to decision and winning, probably winning 3 rounds.
Ross, do you think it goes to decision, or do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I think it goes to decision, Dan Hooker's favour. Yeah, he's just going to outstrike him, outpoint him. Nasrat, as I say, is known to have a bit of a chin on him, but Dan Hooker's known to have a couple bombs. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, my money's on Dan Hooker decision.
I just want to slide in there before anything else is said that we've butchered Nasrat.
Nasrat. HAQPARAST. There you go. It's Nasrat HAQPARAST.
We've butchered his name a lot, and I'm very sorry for that. But I noticed when I was writing my notes down for this card is there is another really hard to pronounce name coming up.
Yeah, there is. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's the next fight that we're at. Thanks for the segue, actually, George.
Yeah, great
set me up to move on to the next fight, which is, of course, the headline of the prelims, which is Marlon Moraes against Merab. Here we go.
Here it comes.
It's Dalishvili. It's Merab Dalishvili.
DVALISHVILI.
There you go. DVALISHVILI. Yeah, precisely. That's what I said.
Yeah.
Now, this one's interesting because obviously Moraes has sort of been there, done it in his career. But he's quite a big price to start at this one at the minute. He's 21-10 at the minute, and Merab's only 4-9. So obviously the bookies are kind of looking in it as Marlon's not got too big a chance here. It's one of the bigger prices of anyone on the card. Is that how you guys see this one as well?
Well, interestingly enough, if you look at these two fighters, Marlon Moraes is probably the more well-known fighter, I'd say. At one point in time, he looked like a force to be reckoned with. I think he knocked out Sterling with a knee, and it was crazy.
Gave Cejudo 3 rounds, didn't he?
He did, but now he's on a 2-fight losing streak. And arguably, he lost to Aldo. I still hold in my heart that Aldo won that fight.
Yeah, agreed.
Yep, and then before that, he lost to Cejudo. So in my eyes, not on paper, he's lost 4 in a row. And Merab DVALISHVILI is on a 6-fight win streak. So the momentum is on Merab's side. And I think his last 6 fights have all been by decision. So I can see him winning by decision.
This is a big factor in the fight is whether Merab can actually get the job done. Now, in his last 5 UFC fights, he's landed 37 takedowns.
Yeah.
But like you said, George, he's gone to decision in each of them, which tells me that he is very strong and his takedown offense is obviously very strong. But when he does get people down there, he can often struggle to get the finish and get the job done. Is that something, Ross, if you were in Moraes' camp, that you'd be kind of looking to play off and make sure that he's certainly the more active when they are in those exchanges, when they are on the feet? If you're his camp, is that the way you go in, high output when they're on the feet?
Yeah, for Marlon, yeah, it's always high output on the feet. Obviously, he's kickboxing. He's kickboxer, Muay Thai, either of them. Obviously, he has also got his black belt in jiu-jitsu though. But as you said, what's he called? Merab. He's got a lot of decision wins, and as you said, it's gone distance. Which maybe he doesn't get the job done, but it implies that he controls it. Like, do you know what I mean? It implies that he controls the ground a lot of the time. So I reckon that Merab is going to do that. He's going to manage to take him down and control Marlon. Probably get a decision win again.
Yeah, well, if you look at his grappling credentials, they're pretty great, to be honest. He's got a lot of credentials in combat sambo and traditional wrestling.
Yeah, sambo wrestling.
Yeah, he's a sambo wrestler, and we know what sambo wrestlers can do in the UFC. We've seen it many times. Moraes is... Have we seen Moraes be taken down before a lot?
I actually did look at this, and his takedown defense percentage is actually pretty respectable. It's 66%. The 2 people that have taken him down in the UFC are Henry Cejudo, who took him down once, and John Dodson, who took him down twice quite early in his career. But the rest, he hasn't suffered a takedown. which is, obviously he's probably never fought anyone quite like MERAB in that sense, that is constantly kind of looking for any opportunity for takedown. But he's not let any one opponent dominate him in the sense that MERAB, I think he's landed 25 takedowns in his last 2 fights. So he's literally ragdolling people. And I don't think Marlon's ever had that happen to him. So in that sense, it'd be interesting to see if Dvalishvili can actually do that to somebody like Marlon. And it'll be a big test of sort of how far he can probably go in this division, really.
What's your prediction then, Adam? I want to hear, what do you think is going to happen?
I would agree with you that MERAB is the most likely outcome is that MERAB just completely dominates and physically dominates him and lands quite a few takedowns and lands a bit of ground and pound. There is Dvalishvili has 1 loss on his record, and even in that fight, I think he landed something like 6 takedowns, but he still managed to come out the wrong side of a decision because his opponent, whose name slips my mind, had a slightly higher striking output. So if I could make a case for Marlon at sort of 21-10, 5-2, which is where he's been in the market sort of all week, it would be if he can limit the number of takedowns. And then, like I say, when they are in those striking matches, when they do get the opportunity to strike, he has to have the higher output and he has to do damage, I think, as well.
I think he's definitely got the advantage on the feet. He's got very good stand-up. His kicks are mad. His striking is very fast, sharp. So on the feet, I think he's definitely got the advantage. But it's one of them. It's not a striking.
Good fight, I think. It's a clash of styles. You know, it's old versus
classic.
New. It is a really good matchup.
I feel like traditionally
wrestling versus striker.
Yeah, I feel like traditionally wrestling comes out on top normally.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
Yeah. I tried my best to make a case for Marlon at 5-2. I tried my best for you, Marlon, but I just can't really see it in this one. Which brings us on to our next one and on to the main card itself.
Yeah, main card.
And a big return here is obviously Jessica Andrade against Cynthia Calvillo in the flyweight division. Obviously, it's the first time we've seen Andrade since she was outclassed really against Valentina Shevchenko. And I guess for her, it's all about a response. Same really for Cynthia Calvillo. Bear in mind that she's also coming into this one off the back of a loss to Katlyn Chookagian. So neither of them are coming into this with momentum. How do you see this one, George?
Well, funnily enough that you mentioned Katlyn Chookagian, because it's an opponent that both of these fighters share. Now, from her last fight, Calvillo got beat by Chookagian. And the fight before Shevchenko, Andrade beat Chookagian. Now, I know MMA maths doesn't always work that way. But what I'm saying is that Andrade has proved that she can beat fighters of this caliber. And Calvillo, her last win was Jessica I. And before that, they're fighters that you don't really hear too much about and don't do too successfully.
Yeah, but the form's not great for her in that regard. Like even that win over Jessica I, what we've seen out of her since it's not great form, is it?
No, exactly. So I think Andrade's going to take it. I think she's got it in her.
Ross, can you believe that Jessica Andrade is only 29 years of age? It feels like she's been around forever. Yeah, she's 29 still. Mad. So and obviously it's not long since she moved up from strawweight to flyweight. And we've seen other fighters sort of take time to bed into new divisions. Do you think that's something that we may have seen with Andrade? Maybe she was pushed towards the Valentina fight maybe before she was ready?
Possibly. I don't know, because she's had the title. She took it off Rose. She then lost it to Rose, I believe. So she's been up there competing with the best at the top. So she knows what the pressure is like. She knows.
Sorry, she lost the belt to. I believe she lost the belt to Weili Zhang. Did she not?
Yeah, she won it from Rose.
Yeah.
She dropped Rose on her head and won the belt. Yeah, and then lost it to
and then Weili, and then but Rose beat her since. Rose has beat Andrade since then. Yeah.
Correct.
Not for the belt.
It was Rose and
then Rose fought Weili for the belt. Yeah, that was it.
Yeah.
So anyway, I think these are quite matched, you know. They've both got pretty powerful, good striking, and they're also both great wrestlers, and both got good grappling. And Calvillo she's got really good sprawls and really good takedown defense. So if Jessica does try and engage that way, I think she might be able to handle her. But I feel like they're very matched in terms of the ground game and the grappling. And then as I say, the striking's quite similar too. So I'm going to go with an underdog pick. And I think Andrade is going to get beat.
That's a great call from you. And Cynthia's 9-4 at the minute, so there's a lot of value in backing Cynthia here.
Yeah,
obviously
Andrade
is the name. No, go on.
Yeah,
mate.
She might be one of the underdogs of the night. I think. How's it going to be done? So 3 rounds. I think it would be a decision. Oh yeah, decision. Yeah. That's what I'm going
for me, I can only see her getting a hand raised in a decision. I don't think she's got what it takes to really bully Jessica Andrade. I don't know, George, do you see it the same as Ross? Do you think Calvillo could get it done here? Or do you think you're sticking more with the bookies? 4-11 for Andrade at the minute.
Yeah, I'm with the bookies. From what I've seen from Calvillo, she's good. And like Ross said, I believe they're very similar fighters, is I think what he was getting at. But I think also what you were getting at is that they're equally skilled, which I would disagree with. I do agree that they are similar fighters, but I think Andrade does everything better. And I think she will do it better on the night. And I think Andrade's probably going to win, but I probably think he's going to go to decision.
Yeah, it is hard to root against Andrade, but I do like an underdog. And I do tend to root for him. But yeah, I do agree that Andrade she's probably is better all round, but they both shine. So in them aspects of the fight. So yeah, and I feel like anything could happen.
Here's my problem with Andrade winning this one, which I think she probably does. I think she's probably got too much to offer here. She is currently number 2 in the flyweight rankings, and we've obviously seen Valentina completely dominate her from start to finish.
Yeah.
If she does win, number 3 is Caitlin Chikagian, who we've just talked about. Obviously, Andrade's beaten her recently. And then number 4 is Lauren Murphy, who we'll talk about later, but is obviously fighting for the belt. So it would be good to see a new face at the top of that division. We need
definitely
a new challenger for Valentina. We need to keep Valentina active. So it would be good to see a new face at the top of that division, but I worry that we'll probably end up with another Valentina Andrade fight at some point in the next sort of 12 months.
I think Valentina's looking to eat every single person in that division for breakfast.
Well, yeah, we'll talk about Valentina in a bit. Our next fight that we're going to run through is actually probably the one on the card that has got me most excited in a weird way, and I can't tell you why. Really? I can't really tell you why. It's Curtis Blades and JAIRZINHO Rozenstruik. I feel like this one's just flown under the radar a bit. Obviously, everyone's talking about Nick Diaz, ROBBIE LAWLER, 17 years since the last fight. Everyone's talking about Valentina. Everyone's talking about the featherweight title main event. And I feel like you could have been remiss for not knowing that this was even on the cards. But I think it's a great matchup. I think it's set to be a really good fight. Obviously, we know heavyweight UFC can be explosive at the best of times. I'd be surprised if this one makes it past 2 rounds. But yeah, I wanted to get your take on the fights. Obviously, it's the first time we've seen Curtis Blades since that massive knockout at the hands of Derek Lewis from that brutal uppercut.
Yeah.
And I guess that's the major question coming into this one, Ross, is how do you think Curtis is gonna respond to that?
I think he's gonna turn up, mate. I think looking back at some of Rozenstruik's fights, like Overeem wrestled him quite a lot, even though he mutilated his lip at the end. He still wrestled him quite a lot. And Blades is a very, very good wrestler, and he's getting better every time we see him. Blades, every time we see him. And Rozenstruik, I feel like only has hands really. Yeah, I think who's got more to prove? I reckon Blades has got more to prove. I see him as a better fighter.
Agree.
And I think he's going to get it done with the decision.
I'd agree that the pressure here is more on Blades. Obviously, he's just, like you say, he's coming in off that loss to Derek Lewis. But I think for me, the concern, George, is surely from a physical point of view. It always worries me to see fighters who have been knocked out cold that first time back in the octagon. Like his lights were just fully out. and just wonder whether we think that'll have an effect on him physically or even mentally, I guess, just kind of not being willing to put himself into the same kind of positions.
Well, with Blaze, I appreciate what you said. When you get knocked out, it must mentally affect you. When you come back in there, you must be worried.
Especially the first time. You maybe get over it within a couple of rounds, but that first round, it's not like, he's not a bantamweight. Like, he's coming in and the guy opposite him is going to be snarling 240-pound man trying to take his head off inside the first 2 minutes.
But we've seen Blades knocked out before. Ngannou come back after the Ngannou fight, and he won 1-1-1-1 until he faced Derek Lewis. The issue with that is Rozenstruik is a Derek Lewis type, and he is an Ngannou type, meaning that he has fists made of freight trains.
Yeah.
And if your chin comes into contact with that, you're going to sleep. And we've seen that Blades can go to sleep. Now, I know he is being knocked out by the hardest punchers in the world, but Rozenstruik is a hard puncher.
Yeah, he's up there.
And I think he could test his chin. Now, that said, I believe Blades, like as Ross said before, is a better fighter. He has better skills all around. Now, we knew his wrestling was quality, but now we know his striking is getting up there too. The way that he's been fighting recently, the way that he beat Volkov, he's a good striker now. He looked like he was beating Derek Lewis in the striking as well. But what you don't realise is you're never really beating Derek Lewis. Because he's just going to knock you out in the last round anyway. So I could see another knockout coming in this fight, and I think it could be quite early. And I think one of the freight trains is going to connect with Blades' chin, and we're going to see him sparked out again. That's my
I've been looking forward. Outcome. I say I've been looking forward to the fight, and I've been looking forward to this moment because this is my opportunity to make a pitch for JAIRZINHO Rozenstruik at 9-4 here. Now, I'm not saying that JAIRZINHO is going to win. Blades is a 1-3 favourite. And I think, maybe that's fair. I think 9-4 for JAIRZINHO here is overpriced. I think it should be a much closer betting occasion than it is. At the end of the day, Rozenstruik's only 2 career losses have come against Francis Ngannou and Cyril Gane. So obviously the champion and the interim champion. That's not bad form. That puts him exactly where he needs to be to beat a guy like Curtis Blades. And I can't see, although Blades is wrestling, I just can't see Blades being able to manhandle JAIRZINHO like Gane was able to. I think Gane is a special talent in that sense.
Yeah.
I think what Blades is going to bring to the table that JAIRZINHO will maybe struggle with is a pace that he isn't necessarily comfortable with. But as you said, George, Rozenstruik is a powerful, powerful man. That knockout of Augusto Sakai in his last fight, he didn't even catch him cleanly. It was, it was a shot that bounced off the side of his head, and it just put him down. You could see on Sakai's face when he hit the ground that it was like, oh my God, what was that? Like, what just hit me? And I think 9-4 Rozenstruik is overpriced, and I think if I was gonna give you my bet for this card, I think it's gonna be JAIRZINHO Rozenstruik at 9-4 because I think it's just too big to ignore somebody with that much power coming in against somebody who's coming in off a big knockout themselves. We're back, part 2, Octagon Odds. We've got the rest of the UFC 266 card to look forward to. And our next fight is what's being dubbed the people's main event on this card. Who is excited to see Nick Diaz back in a UFC octagon?
Cannot wait, mate. Honestly, as I said before, it must be getting on 7 years now. He got banned for 5 years, didn't he? Because of
it's January 2015, his last fight. So
yeah, because of marijuana, he got banned, didn't he?
Correct. Yeah.
So he wants to take the lead on this beast of a fight. Then,
I mean, where do we even get started? It's Nick Diaz, Robbie Lawler. Obviously, this is a rematch from UFC 47, 17 years in the making. Now, I don't know if anyone keeps records on this sort of thing, but surely that is the longest gap between a rematch in UFC history.
I don't know how long was Tito and Chuck Liddell.
It was a good shout.
17 years. 17 years old. It was April 2004, the first fight.
Yeah, I can't imagine
Yeah.
Chuck and Tito being longer, but that's another one.
I'll
Yeah, and that
certainly
first fight-
look.
That first fight between Nick and Robbie was a banger. I know I wasn't watching UFC at the time, but I've seen that fight many times. It's a Nick Diaz masterpiece. He just absolutely outclassed him. Now I know it's been a long time, but from what I can see, is Lawler's on a four fight losing streak, and he seems to be on a skid. Now we've seen it from Robbie before, and he's come back, but he's probably past it now. Would you agree? Everyone agree?
I mean, he's 39 years of age, so
39, yeah.
But I don't see how we can say Lawler is going to be any more past it than Nick Diaz. Like you say, it's been nearly 7 years since we saw Nick in the Octagon, and it's been the best part of 9 years since his last win in the UFC. He only has one win since he returned to the UFC in 2012. So anyone who tries to convince you that Nick Diaz is going to come back and somehow be a part of the title picture in this division is kidding themselves.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
And I think I think we all know that, don't we? And I think that's not what this fight is necessarily about. I think, like you say, Lawler's on a 4-fight skid, and he's got something to prove. Otherwise, this could well be his last fight in the UFC. And Diaz is coming back, like we say, for the first time. And it's just, Ross, there's so many unknowns here. Is it even possible to think about how this one might play out in terms of how the fight might go?
I think it's probably going to be on the feet, I reckon. I think Diaz is going to want to come back and stand and bang, and that's what Lawler loves to do. Now, it's not going to be anything like the first fight, I don't think, because if you watch it back, look how far in Robbie Lawler's head Nick Diaz is. He's absolutely embedded in his brain. Lawler's shouting at him, like losing his head, getting frustrated with himself. Lawler's not going to be like that now. He's like obviously a lot more mature, much older man. There's not going to be as much riding on it. Like back then, Lawler was like feared, and no one wanted to fight him. And then Nick was coming in, talking shit, calling him a pussy and that. And Lawler just didn't really know how to handle it. And it's not going to be like that this time. So I think it's just going to be down to the skill sets of the guys. But as far as
you're telling me that you don't think Nick Diaz is going to chat some shit when he's in there?
No, I didn't say that. I said it's not going to affect Lawler the same as it did last time.
I think of all the unknowns, I think that's probably the one guarantee is that Nick Diaz is going to go in there and he's going to chat some shit.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I just don't think it will affect Lawler like it did last time.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing we're probably guaranteed is action. Obviously, sort of neither of them are really particularly renowned for being very restrained in there. Obviously, Diaz is sort of well known as kind of one of the biggest showmen that the UFC has ever produced, and he knows full well that all the attention is going to be on him. There's been so much talk about his return and how he's going to look, and I for one cannot wait to see how he looks.
Agreed.
And how this one's going to play out. I just want to move to the betting market, George, on this one, because it's the betting market is finding this one as difficult to call as we are. At the minute, it's Nick Diaz 10-11, and it's Robbie Lawler bang there with him at 10-11. Nothing to split between them, and it's been that way pretty much since it opened. There's just, let's say, from a betting perspective, there's just so many unknowns, and it's probably the opposite thing is what you're looking for with a punter. If someone's asking for my tip, I just wouldn't bet on this fight. I would avoid betting on this fight because there's so many unknowns. We don't know how Diaz is going to look. Robbie Lawler's form is really hard to predict. Obviously, he's lost to Magny, to Colby Covington, to Ben Askren, and to RDA back to back. I'd say probably. I was going to say with a bit of an asterisk over the Askren fight. Is that career-ending form? Is that the end of, have we seen the end of Robbie Lawler? Who knows? And I think that's what's going to make it so difficult from a betting perspective. Can either of you pick us a winner? Be braver than me. Step out and just try and pick us a winner in this one.
That's why it's a great fight as well, because I feel like if Nick was still around and he'd been active this whole time, he'd sort of might be at the same sort of stage as Lawler. Do you know what I mean? Both veterans,
Yeah.
But there must only be 1 or 2 years.
Will
between
that
them,
play a factor in it though? There's 2 years between them in age. Do you think this will be a factor, Ross? The fact that obviously is ring rust maybe a thing from Nick's point of view, but Robbie's actually had, in the time that Nick's been off, Robbie's had 7 UFC fights.
That's what I mean.
So could that actually harm Lawler's chance in terms of a bit of wear and tear? You know, maybe a few old injuries. Whereas Nick, there's no excuse for him not being kind of well rested and sort of physically ready to go for this, is there?
You can look at it both sides, literally like opposite sides. As you've just explained, then the other side of it is that he's been in there working, he's staying fit, he's staying active, his tools are like staying sharp. Whereas Nick has been inactive. Who knows how much he's been training? Like I see he's still doing his like triathlons and that on Instagram, but is it like, that's not really training, is it, for a fight? Whereas Lawler,
I mean, his last name is Diaz, so I really don't think we have to worry about his cardio.
Yeah, no, not even cardio, just form in general. Like as you say, Lawler, yeah, he's had 7 fights, so that's a lot of wear and tear, but it's also activity and staying on top of it, innit? And but yeah, it's Diaz. Like we know one thing's sure. Well, you'd say that Diaz isn't getting knocked out.
Yeah. So I noticed you're sitting on the fence. And you
so on the fence, yeah. I don't really know. I honestly don't know.
Can you see either one of them? Which one can you pick here?
So, I'm a huge Diaz fan. Always have been ever since I was following the UFC. It's always been Nick and Nate Diaz, 2 of my favorites. I've always thought Nate was the worst fighter and Nick was the better fighter from when they were at the primes. It's just so difficult to say whether or not Diaz is going to come back. How is he going to be? Nobody has a clue. We've not got a clue. Probably the biggest unanswered question we've ever had in terms of a returning fighter. It's been 7 years. He could be a different man. Could have been training the whole time. I know that he teaches you jiu-jitsu and stuff, so we know that he's been training because he's Diaz, bro. He is constantly doing cardio. He's going to come back fit, but is he going to come back sharp? He never was a strong, hard puncher. We know Robbie Lawler still has some bombs on him. We know Robbie Lawler's been active. We know Robbie Lawler, even though he's lost a lot of fights, we know he can still fight. What we're going to see, this is what I think we're going to see. We're going to see Nick Diaz come back, and we're all going to be a little bit sad by what we see. Now, this is not a nice prediction. I think we're all going to be a little bit like, probably shouldn't have come back, and Robbie Lawler's going to take the dub.
I really hope we don't see, like you say, just like a shell of what he once was, because I think that'd be a shame. Like you say, we'd all sort of look at it as, maybe you should have stayed away. To counter to that, is there anyone out of the 3 of us that thinks this isn't going to be Nick Diaz's last fight? Because even if he does get a win, I just can't see where he goes next. I don't see another great matchup for him after this. Yeah.
You could. I mean, who else is kicking? Condit.
The name that always gets branded about
Condit
is
rematch.
Carlos Condit. Did he not just retire this week? Or last week, I should say.
This week.
Did he?
Yeah, I believe. Yeah. He announced. Yeah. I'd like someone. I know it'd probably be me to fact check that one, but I believe Carlos Condit announced his retirement not so long ago.
I'll tell you what though. Go on. Sorry.
Go on. Tell me. If you're going to tell me,
I'll tell you what though. I'll tell you what's going to happen over the next year or so. Right, Nick Diaz is going to come back, and if Nick Diaz beats Robbie Lawler, I'll tell you what's going to happen here right now. Okay, Artie's prediction for the episode. We'll do one an episode, and this is the first one. Okay, GSP versus Nick Diaz next year.
No, that is so bold as a prediction.
It's happened once, right? It's happened once. GSP will come back for. GSP will look and he'll go, Nick Diaz, that's an easy money fight that I can come back for another one, and he'll cash out and they'll fight.
I don't feel like GSP needs.
You told me no. Go on, sorry.
GSP is banging to the karate at the minute, and I don't think he's moving away from the karate for one. The name that always gets branded about Ross is Jorge Masvidal.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
I know Masvidal's getting lined up against Leon Edwards. But either if that fight doesn't happen, or if Edwards beats Jorge, maybe as a coming off back-to-back losses, maybe that'd be a good one to get Jorge back up there. Obviously, be a big name. Would you like? Is that a fight you'd want to see?
Well, yeah, of course you'd want to, but it all depends on how Nick Diaz turns up, really, doesn't it? Because if you even if he beats Lawler and he's a bit like Masvidal at this point, it's a top name, isn't he? Like he's top of the food chain, really. He's up there. So Nick Diaz is going to have to do something pretty special to get a Masvidal fight next, if that's what you're saying. But
okay.
Yeah, of course, who won't want to see that?
Yeah, I see your point about maybe if we see a big Nick Diaz knockout or a big performance from him, maybe that is one that could potentially get lined up. But yeah, I mean, we could sit here and talk about Nick Diaz all day, to be honest. It's obviously great to have him back, and obviously we hope that it's not his one and only fight. But I just personally think that I can't see him fighting again. To me, this feels like a farewell.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
So, title fight time. Now, there's two title fights on this card. Obviously, George said it could be one of the best cards of the year. The all-conquering Valentina Shevchenko. Obviously, we talked about her win over Jessica Andrade earlier in the year. For me, I felt that was the best Valentina that we've seen so far, the best version of Valentina Shevchenko. George, do you agree that she's kind of gone to a new level in recent fights?
I'd say that every Valentina Shevchenko we see is the new best Valentina Shevchenko.
Yeah, nice.
I think every time she turns up, she has something new in her locker, or she looks a little bit sharper, she looks a little bit faster. And it's safe to say she's already been levels above her competition. It's just, the gap's just widening, Adam. She is unbeaten in 12 fights by anybody not called Amanda Nunes. And I don't see that ending right now.
For me, Ross, one of the things that, and it's something that I spotted in Valentina maybe more sort of before the Jennifer Maia fight, but particularly before the Andrade fight, it almost felt like she had a chip on her shoulder. She had a bee in her bonnet about maybe not getting the respect that she thinks she deserves. Obviously, everyone calls Amanda Nunes the GOAT. Obviously, she has those wins against Shevchenko, but it felt like Shevchenko went in there against Andrade with a point to prove. She wasn't happy to just beat Jessica Andrade. She had to show the world just how much better she is than Jessica Andrade, and it was almost like in the interview at the end, it was almost like, Dana, like, why are you putting these girls in here with me? Like they just have no hope. Do you see anyone outside of Amanda Nunes in the UFC, though, or even outside of the UFC, that you think she could challenge Valentina?
No, I do think Nunes is the only one, and I do think Nunes still wins the third fight. To be honest with you, I don't think there's many people that can do anything to Shevchenko. That thing you said about the chip on the shoulder with Andrade, I feel like it was sort of directed towards Andrade, because she's known for wrestling and being able to control people and stuff, and that was people's opinion. If Andrade would have won, it would have been through wrestling and controlling it, and that's exactly what Valentina went out and did to her, like easily, just absolutely walked all over her and was like, so she was meant to wrestle me, and I've just done that to her. I get what you mean about the respect on the name, but I do think Nunes is better than her.
Yeah, and I think it's just more, maybe we should put, Valentina and Nunes side by side rather than 1 and 2. And it struck me that maybe that was the point that she was trying to make, is like, look, maybe Amanda might have edged these two meetings that we've had already, but I'm right up there, and there isn't anyone at flyweight really that can touch her. And George, that obviously leads us to Lauren Murphy, who I guess is the next unlucky camper along here. Is there anything in Valentina's game that Murphy can look to exploit here, or vice versa? Is there any sort of weapon in Murphy's arsenal that you think could cause Valentina trouble on Saturday night?
Well, from what we've seen from Murphy, has a pretty well-rounded game. I know we're talking about Valentina Shevchenko, but coming up against any fighter who's on a 5-fight win streak like Lauren Murphy is tough. She's got wind in her sails. She's won a lot of fights. She's won fights by submission, by ultimate decision, by KO and TKO, and she's just shown that she has a well-rounded game. I'm not mad at her fighting Valentina, and I think it's going to be. She's still going to get beaten very, very easily. Don't get me wrong, but I think she's going to show more than we expected to. She's probably going to be one of Valentina's best fights of her past few fights. I don't think Andrade, I don't think Maya, I don't think Jukagian or Carmouche were any good compared to Shevchenko. I think Murphy's probably better than all of those, apart from Andrade. So I think she's got a better chance than we are giving her, but she's still got no chance, if you understand what I'm saying.
I think her striking is good. It's not great, but it's good. I think she changes levels well. And if she can do that and maybe surprise Valentina by shooting the odd takedown and maybe just trying to physically upset Valentina and just really get amongst it, maybe she has a chance. But like you said, I just can't see it going any way other than Valentina. And the betting market reflects that massively. Valentina 1-14 at the minute, odds on 1-14, and Murphy is 9-1, and she's still drifting. To be honest, there hasn't been much support really in the market for Lauren Murphy since it opened. Ross, if Lauren Murphy walks out of UFC 266 as the women's flyweight champion, is that the biggest title shock in MMA history? And by the way, on the last trivia question that I put you on the spot with, Liddell Ortiz 2 was 12 years apart. So it's actually a really good suggestion from you, but not quite as long as Diaz LAWLER 2. So would Murphy walking out with the belt here be the biggest shock in UFC history?
Off the top of my head, nothing's. What else is there? What's a massive shock? Matt Serra and GSP, that was pretty big. Weidman, Anderson Silva probably wasn't as wide in a betting sense, but obviously the way Anderson was at that point, he was kind of untouchable. But even what about Bisping? Norfolk Bisping would beat Anderson, did they?
Bisping and Rockhold. Bisping, Rockhold, and Rose Namajunas and Young Jacek.
To be fair, do you know what no one thought would happen? No one thought would happen. Henry Cejudo would beat Demetrius Johnson. No one thought that would happen.
Yeah.
No one.
Yeah, that's agreed. And the form that he went into after that is probably unrivaled, really, in it, to be carried out and then win every single fight after that from it and beating all the best in the division.
What a beast.
Just coming up, 2-division champion. Legend.
Anyway, in response to your question, it's definitely up there, Adam. Like, if Lauren Murphy was to beat Shevchenko, top 3, I'd say, definitely. But I just don't.
Final question then, sorry, before we move on to the last fight, because we are a little bit tight for time, is if and possibly when Valentina does win here, what's next for her? Because as we talked about earlier in the show, the flyweight is looking a little bit light of contenders. Do we look back for another Nunes fight? Is that the way we go after this?
I think it's got to be, really. Everyone just sort of knows that's the only. That isn't, because that's going to be hard for Nunes too. I think Shevchenko is peaking at the moment. Like, maybe Nunes is too, but Shevchenko's definitely peaking, I'd say. She's definitely at the best that she's ever been, which obviously means that she's better than, in my opinion, better than when she fought Nunes them 2 times, which were quite a while ago, I believe, a couple of years at least.
Yeah.
I think Shevchenko's a lot better.
Valentina have enough to beat Nunes in a third fight, George?
That is, I think that might be one of the toughest.
Yeah.
But that might be one of the highest level technical fights in the whole UFC.
Oh my God, imagine that fight.
I don't think there's another fight that they could make in the UFC that's already happened twice already that could probably get me more excited than seeing those two do it for a third time. Because I just think
Volkanovski and Max, what about that?
I was going to say Volk Max, which leads us on to the main fight.
I tell you what, for episode 1, the segues have been unbelievable. It's been a 10-7. It's been a 10-7 round to the Octagon Odds lads against Segways today. So yeah, the main event of the evening. Alexander Volkanovski defends his belt for the first time against somebody who's not called Max Holloway. Again, and obviously he's facing Brian Ortega. Now, there's the obviously undertone with this one of they've been sort of going at each other during the Ultimate Fighter process and obviously being coaches on that. The thing I want to talk about first on this one, because it always annoys me when they have champions as the coaches on Ultimate Fighter, because at the end of the day, it always holds up the division. And, you know, the champion always ends up being out of action. And for some reason, they make the bizarre decision to not have the coaches fight on the same card as the finals. So we had the finals like 6 weeks ago, and now it's like, oh yeah, by the way, the coaches are fighting. I think with the champion, it's held up the division. And I think in this instance, it's actually worked out quite nicely. Because I don't think in the interim, it's been over a year since Volkanovski Max 2. It's been 11 months since Brian Ortega beat Korean Zombie last October.
Seriously?
I don't think. It's been 11. It's been 11 months already. And you remember how much hype was around, you know, the new T-City after that fight. It has that momentum really has kind of subsided now. And I think that's the point here, is that I think in any other division, there would have been someone who had probably been a bit hard done to here, and it would have a right to turn around and say, you know, I should have had my title fight by now. But nobody at featherweight has really stepped above the precipice during the interim and said, and you know, who's next to fight for the featherweight belt? If it's not Max Holloway,
they've got to get through Max to prove himself, which is
again,
it's harder than the title fight.
You're looking below that. You're looking at people like Calvin Kattar, who obviously just lost to Max. You're looking at Korean Zombie, who obviously just lost to Ortega, and then
Rodriguez. Zabit.
I guess the only other real contender there is Giga Chikadze. I think he's only 7-0 in his professional career. So again, kind of not massive experience. Is featherweight, George, probably one of the lightest divisions in the UFC's male roster at the minute?
Ooh, good call up.
Most certainly. I think from the last 5 years, a lot of the divisions have got thicker. So we used to see very top-heavy divisions. Now we see them like maybe 1 to 10 are quite world-class fighters. But featherweight seems to be the weakest one. And that's not saying anything, because most of the other divisions are absolutely stacked right now.
If you look at the list, though, it's Max number 1. Obviously, we've got Volkanovski as a champion. Max number 1, Brian Ortega number 2, Yair Rodriguez.
Yeah, I've got to disagree, lads.
Korean Zombie number 4, Calvin Kattar number 5, and then we're looking at Arnold Allen number 6, Josh Emmett number 7, Giga Chikadze at number 8, Dan Ige number 9, Edson Barboza. On paper, that's a strong looking division. I think my point is more that during this year absence where the champion's not been fighting, they've all kind of lost to one another. So no one's really made there's no real obvious candidate apart from Max to fight the winner of this fight.
Yeah, I know what you mean, but I wouldn't say it's the least stacked by any means. I think there's some massive names in that top 15 all the way down.
I would like you to suggest what division is less stacked than it.
Flyweight.
Okay. All right.
I think flyweight. Flyweight. To be fair,
he just said it. Didn't even suggest like who was in it or anything.
Flyweight had a really good year. Like probably 12 months ago, I would have said flyweight as well. But
I disagree with that.
Moreno, Figueiredo have had really good sort of year, 18 months. Askar Askarov has been doing well. You got Alex Perez, Brandon Royval, Kai Kara France, Matt Schnell, people like that who've made a good impression last year. I think it's a good clapback, to be fair, Ross. I think that, and you could argue maybe heavyweight is a bit
heavyweight or what's light heavyweight. Even light heavyweight, it's got like 6 or 7, but like other, do you know what I mean?
Light heavyweight is a very good shout, to be honest.
Yeah, no, I thought featherweight's pretty stacked. When you literally, I know you've just read out the names, but not the obvious ones. You've got Yair Rodriguez, Korean Zombie, even like Dan Ige is a beast, Barboza, Bryce Mitchell, Yusuf, all of them are bangers.
I just think that I just think that I would have liked to have seen during the last 12 months, I would have liked to have seen somebody sort of really put their hand up and say, you know, I'm the guy now, I'm the next guy.
I get the point.
It looked like that might have been Calvin Cater, but then obviously he got Max declassed.
Yeah.
Going back to the main event, George, obviously it's actually Ortega's only one fight removed from quite an embarrassing defeat against Holloway himself. I'll always remember Holloway sort of teaching him to put his guard on mid-fight. I think that's probably the epitome of being Max declassed, is that he literally gave a lesson in the middle of the fight. Since then, he was really impressive against Korean Zombie, as we said, and he built up a lot of momentum and a lot of hype. People saying, okay, this is a new look T City. Do you buy into that? Do you think that this is a different Ortega to the one that we saw in his last title fight against Max?
Yes, I do. So going back to your point, there's one thing from your whole monologue then that I can't agree with, and it's that the teaching Ortega how to fight was the peak of Max Declassing. The peak of Max Declassing was when he was looking at Daniel Cormier and dodging every single one of Calvin Cater's punches for 9 punches and then countering him accurately.
I mean, I would agree, but there's something really embarrassing about your opponent.
And he literally moves his arm up.
Being taught to fight during a fight is not a great look, and it mustn't feel great.
For me, that's like, you know when you play FIFA with someone and they kick the ball back to the keeper and they just smack one into the net with the keeper. I feel like that's a bit
definitely. Yeah, it's definitely. Anyway, back to the main event. Ortega Volkanovski. So what we know about Volkanovski? What do we know about Volkanovski?
Is T-City a new T-City?
That's what. That was your question. That was your question, right? Yes, he is. Yes, he is. I think what we saw after the Max fight was he went away for quite a while, and when he came back against the Korean Zombie, he looked absolutely outrageous. He looked absolutely amazing. Striking looked on a different level. Striking sense looked on a different level. Movement looked on a different level. We've always known that his ground game, maybe his takedowns are a bit lacking, but if he's down there with you, he's got the better of you. Now his striking's looking pretty great. Is it good enough to be Volkanovski? No, but he's still looking. It's still a new TC. To answer your question.
Okay, and so I guess that answers the question of who you think will win this fight. But Ross, I guess one of the things that we didn't really see against T-City against Max, I don't think he attempted a single takedown during the fight. He certainly didn't land a takedown.
T-City, he tried a couple.
He's obviously a Gracie Jiu-Jitsu student. Like, is that something he should be leaning on in this one a little bit more than he has in previous?
I don't know. I think he's at the point. A lot of fighters do it, and a lot of fighters come into the UFC, like jiu-jitsu practitioners or striking masters, and then they do sit for a while, and then they get beat, and then they go and evolve the rest of the game that they've not previously been focused on. T-City's done it. Ngannou did it when we saw him sprawl and stop that takedown against Stipe, and it's scary when you see these guys because now everyone knows that Ortega's got that ground game, and you don't want to touch him on the ground. And now he's got this vicious stand-up. So I forgot the question. I went off of one.
That's fine. The question was more about whether T-City needs to use his ground game a little bit more. But I also want to ask about Volk. And I guess it was a surprise to almost everyone the first time Volk beat Max. And you can say what you want about the second one and, you know, whether it was a good decision. Yeah. But do you think that Volkanovski is the real deal? Do you think he is a level above Max? Because we've obviously spoken about Max in the past as a potential, you know, greatest of all time featherweight potentially. Is Volkanovski on that level, or do you think he just has a style that suited well against Max?
It's very difficult because, in my opinion, Max is the best featherweight in the world, but he's been beaten twice by Volkanovski. And to feed into what you said, I think Volk's style is the best counter to Max, and that's why he's won there. But you can't discount Volkanovski's 22-1 record, and him having beaten Holloway twice, Aldo once, Mendez once in his past 4 fights. So he is obviously world class. It's hard for me to say he's better than Max Holloway because I've seen Max Holloway do things that no other human in the world can do. So it's just difficult. I don't know.
So in this
That's what
one,
I'm trying to say. What do you think, Adam?
the betting market, it's 8-13 in favour of Volkanovski at the minute. Ortega's out there at 6-4 at the minute. So there is a little bit of value if you think that Ortega can get the job done. And if you want my opinion, which you did just ask, George, so I'm going to give it anyway. I think probably, again, that Volkanovski's style, in the same way that it really helped him against Max, will help him against Ortega. Again, I think the way that Volkanovski was able to kind of counter Max's pressure with pressure, force him back, force him onto the back foot, force him towards the cage, is really going to help him with T-City striking. He'll have to be wary for the ground game. I don't doubt that. But yeah, for me, it's Volkanovski retains here. And I think he could easily, I think he could equally, I think he could get the finish as well.
Okay, that's interesting, because I can't see Ortega getting finished. I think he's got a huge chin on him, and I think if it goes to the ground, he's got the advantage. So
11-8 Volkanovski is to take a decision, which I think that's good money. Given that obviously he went the distance with Holloway twice. I think he went the distance with Aldo. So obviously he's gone to the judges in his last 3. So I think that's a good bet too.
Yeah, I agree. And at the end of the day, I think Volkanovski's gonna take it.
Ross, do you think that as well? Volkanovski gets the win?
I do, mate. Like you said before, I think Volkanovski is the real deal, mate. He's so good. Whether or not he's better than Max is a different question, but I think he'll beat Ortega. Honestly, his Octagon IQ is next level. Like if you watch him in the Max fight, the amount of like changes they make to the game mid fight, like every time Max figures something out, Volkanovski will figure that out that Max has just figured out, and so on and so on. And it's so sick to watch. And I really love watching Volkanovski. I love them both. To be fair, I love Ortega as well. But yeah, I think it's his stature as well. Like he's got that powerful small base, and he Volkanovski, mad leg kicks. If you can get the legs done in on Ortega, then that's his jiu-jitsu gone, really, innit? If you can damage the legs enough. So that's one less thing to worry about. And then obviously it affects your stand-up as well. And Volkanovski's like his distance management and
the calf kicks could be a big factor in this one, as they were against Max.
Yeah. I think it's a 5-rounder. It's gonna be.
I think personally, Volk wears him out, beats him up, and finishes him in round 4. Personally.
Yeah, I reckon it might be like a ground finish. I mean, knock him down and then ground and pound him in round 4. Yeah, ground and pound finish, round 4, Volkanovski.
Oh, as long as we're on the same page, then it seems like a good time to move on to our final section. Ross, have you picked out an accumulator for this one? Because one of my favourite things about betting on UFC cards, it doesn't have to be about big stakes and waging big money. And obviously, we always ask people to kind of gamble responsibly and don't gamble anything you're not willing to lose. But one of my favorite things to do is pick out 3 or 4 fighters on the card, maybe 5, and try and put together a bit of an accumulator. Have you got one for us? I've got one written down here, and I've priced it up if you want to hear it.
Yeah, go on, let's see yours.
I've gone 5-fold. So I've gone Hooker to win, Merab to win, Andrade to win, Shevchenko to win, and Volkanovski to win. Now, obviously, you heard me harping up on JAIRZINHO before. Like I said, I think it's just overpriced, that one. This is not one that I think that's definitely going to happen. So I'm sticking with that 5-fold. Hooker, Merab, Jessica Andrade, Valentina Shevchenko, and Volkanovski all to win. That comes in at 9-2 at the minute.
Yeah, it's like we said before, I'd stay away from Nick and Lawler. Blades and ROZENSTRUIK, as you said, mate, tough one again to call. Tough one. There's a few that should be quite obvious, like Shevchenko. You've got to get her on the accumulator, haven't you? I'd
100%.
say, I've got to get Dan Hooker on there as well. I'd chuck MERAB on. I think he's going to, as we said, control MORAES and dominate him on the ground.
That just leaves you short of Andrade. If you think Andrade's going to beat Calvillo, I know you were actually backing Calvillo, basically with me at 9-2.
That's the thing. Yeah, I didn't back Andrade in my predictions, but if I were, it's weird because
you think she's more likely if you're going to put the accumulator on. I 100% with you. That's exactly how I feel about Rozenstruik as well. Like, I wouldn't put him in the accumulator, but I think at 9 to 4, he's definitely worth a go. So that's it, boys. Episode 1 wrapped up. Thank you for joining us. If you are listening, I must remind you, obviously, if you are gambling on this weekend's card, to, of course, do so responsibly. Please, head over. You listen to us on Apple or Spotify or SoundCloud. Leave us a review, rate the show, let us know what you thought. It really just helps us kind of be discovered on the page and help other people find the show. So that's massively appreciated. And yeah, head over to Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. You'll find us there, Octagon_odds. That's it, boys. Enjoy the show. Enjoy UFC 266. Enjoy the return of Nick Diaz.
Yes, lovely, boys. Thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely, guys. Thank you very much for listening.